Okay, so very, very warm welcome to Divine Business Journeys. This is a guest interview series where we are going on journeys to meet creatives, mystics, holistic business owners, and learning from our guest experience, sharing in their gifts, challenges, and breakthroughs on their divine business journeys. So this is episode 8, and we are joined by a modern day mystic and wizard, Tom Evans. And so we will be tuning into Tom's experience and insights from his own divine business journey. And I'll just introduce Tom for those who may not have come across his work before. So Tom is a meditation guide and a which includes his For Today series and a wide variety of meditations, meditales, music, and mindful conversations and courses. And these include Your Soul Path, The Business of Mindfulness, The Art of Timefulness, Mindfulness for Busy People. He is also a prolific author of many mindfulness, metaphysical, philosophical, and visionary books, including a novel anthology called the Soulwaves, and these include A Future History, Insertions, and the Duadex. And he has written tarot-inspired works of various kinds, including his music and a short story series called the Germinatrix. And I listened recently to your poetic short story, The 100 Years of Ermintrude, which I loved. And anyone who's not heard that, please have a listen to it. It's all set to music and beautifully narrated by not yourself, actually, Tom, in that instance. Maybe you can share more about that shortly. And you're also a co-creator of an innovative new tarot deck and writer of the companion book on the path to Overstanding and the Overstanding Tarot, which is being illustrated by Siri, who I can see has joined us on this call today. So look forward to hearing a bit more about your collaboration shortly too. And also you will be sharing about the metaphor of chakras in divine business and guiding us in a very special chakra meditation. So look forward to that. So welcome, Tom.
Great to be here. What a lovely introduction. Thank you very much. I can't believe I've done all that stuff.
I can't believe, yes, the more, I first encountered your work through Insight Timer and really loved your warm, friendly voice, and you very quickly became a go-to meditation teacher on Insight Timer when I first discovered it. It's been quite a while now. I can't quite remember the exact date, but yeah, I think you've been there since I don't even know when they first started, but I've been tuning in for quite a few years, and you're quite a strong presence on their app. And yes, I've since discovered the more I've tuned into your work, the more I feel a lot of the way you work resonate. And it was not only recently, actually, I discovered that you lean towards the tarot, and the tarot's inspired your work in many ways. Of course, I'm a tarot reader myself and have been for many years. So when I found out about that, I found that truly inspiring. But yeah, all of these prolific different spiritual related things that you do is actually more recent, because you were a BBC engineer before that, weren't you? So I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you transitioned into this world, and yeah, how did that all come about? I'd love to hear a little bit more about life before and after Insight Timer, and your journey to becoming a meditation teacher and all the things.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for that lovely overview. I suppose I've always been lucky, really. So I did start out at the BBC. Before I did that, I did a degree in electronics. A great job at the BBC. Got headhunted by Sony about 2 or 3 years after that. Then I got headhunted to go to London, just at the start of independent television in the UK. So I was very much one of these right place, right time things. And by the time I was 25, 26, I had my own business. By the time I was 30, my business sold it to another company. And so I got this it relates to this chakra journey in a way, because what I didn't realize at the time is my foundations were being laid, really strong foundations. So I became very adept, and that's the word we use in metaphysical circles, at all things video and audio, which is very handy now. And then I sold that business, and I had to do a year of gardening leave because I did a non-compete clause. And this thing called the internet was just starting up. So I said to them, well, we've got to get into the internet. And that's the reason I left them. They thought, oh, the internet will never catch on. We'll never do video and audio over internet. So I threw my toys out of the pram, left the company, the merged company that I'd been purchased by. And I set up a year later an internet company, and then grew that. And then that sold about 10 years later as well, just at the right place at the right time. And I was really, by my mid-40s, I was quite disenchanted. You know, as the world I worked in, the corporate world, was quite aggressive. I had a kind of mini breakdown, but not a complete breakdown, and just thought there must be something more to life than this. So ended up going on holiday with the lady who narrates Ermintrude, who's my life partner, Louise. Went over to the Caribbean, and we saved up a bit of money to go on Concorde, but Concorde was falling out the sky, so we went first class. And in the first class lounge of this 747, this story came in, Ermintrude. It just came in kind of out of nowhere. I found out later that I channeled it, even though I didn't know what at the time. And the idea behind Ermintrude was, I always liked stories that embrace sort of birth, life, and death, and it was inspired by Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude. But I thought I'd try and compress it into a little story. It's just it's 33 4-line stanzas, which are snapshots of this lady who lives to 100. And then when we got to the end, I was on a Science 7. iPads didn't even exist then. I'd written on a Science 7. I got Louise to read it, and she said, what would it be like backwards? So we turned it round. It starts at 100, goes back down to 0. It's like living life backwards. Found out later that F. Scott Fitzgerald had done The Tale of Benjamin Button, which is very similar. And anyway, so I published it when I got back. It mentions breast cancer, and it's not about breast cancer. And as a result of that, I ended up walking around London in a bra for 26 miles, which is what I expect to do. And then people started to approach me. Just at the time I sort of got disenchanted and given up a perfectly good career without one to go to. People started to approach me saying, would you help me write a book? And I did. And I found that a lot of people were stuck. And even though I was good at the technical, the process of creating a book, and all from starting to writing to get published, I didn't have any skills to help people that got stuck. So I studied some NLP and some hypnotherapy and some past life regression, and I became really, really good at getting people through books. I found that 50% of people didn't finish their book because they had a writer's block, and out of them, it wasn't even a writer's block; it was a life block masquerading as a block. I became an author's mentor, and then you have to have a book, don't you, to go with that skill. So I wrote my first non-fiction book called Blocks. 18 books later, and I kept writing books that helped me, and I thought it'd be a nice idea to put meditations with the books. Because I studied hypnotherapy. I haven't studied meditation ever. I've never been inside an ashram, but I studied hypnotherapy and hypnotic writing and how to get people in trance through language. And so I put these meditations with it. And then the classic thing, you buy a book and then you sign up to something free and you get their email address and you try and plug something. So that model, which I don't do anymore, by the way. And then what happened was the meditations got discovered by Insight Timer. They said, would you upload one of your meditations to the app? And I did, and it all kind of took off from there. So I became an author's mentor by accident, became an author by accident, became a meditation teacher by accident. The things I'm doing right now are kind of also by accident, but I realized that all this time, my soul's been pulling me in this direction, and I know things will change again. And in fact, so much so that the course I just released on Insight Timer is about your soul path and how you don't find your path, but you set up conditions for it to find you. And the first one of these is building solid foundations, getting your skill sets in place and that sort of stuff. So all the time we've been building and strengthening the foundations to create this big edifice, which is the portfolio of work.
Amazing. So I suppose in your case, I mean, I think in everybody's case, but yeah, the way you describe your journey, it certainly does sound very divinely guided. And you say by accident, of course. There doesn't really seem to be accidents when we, in retrospect, when we look back at the little things that all sort of little drips all kind of accumulate and create this momentum, which, you know, you don't know until later on. But it's incredible the volume of work that you've created, considering that you started out in your mid 40s. So you say you've written 18 books now.
About a book a year it was, and I've now stopped. I've slowed down because this book, The Path to Overstanding, or the Book of Overstanding, is quite huge. So I'm spending 2 years creating that, serializing it online through an app as well, the audio version of it, along with some meditations. But I realize it's my magnum opus, and it's time to slow down and let it really rebuild, and it's getting bigger and bigger by the month. And I say month specifically because I time everything nowadays to the moon phase.
Oh, I love that. Yes, yes. Tell us a little bit about how you work with the moon to get into this rhythm and flow. I mean, I think flow is quite a good word with the moon because, of course, there's ebbs and flows. And I would imagine with, well, I mean, I'd love to hear it from your perspective, but yeah, how do you, with that prolific output of work, how do you work with the moon to kind of recharge and energize yourself so that you can create to the level that you have?
Well, I'll dive into the tarot a little bit, which that's how I got into moon phase, through the tarot. The tarot seems to me it's a set of people. Obviously, it's known as a fortune telling deck, and you can use it for divination. That's one of the applications, but to me, it's not one of the major applications. It's a set of keys. So the major arcana of the tarot, and my second book after blocks. So if you like, Ermintrude was my zero book. I don't call it my first book. It was just this book that popped out, and that just showed me the way of writing and publishing, and it introduced me to the publishing industry. Then I got a publishing deal for blocks. I wrote another book called Lightbulb Moments, and that took a year for them to publish. But in the meantime, I wrote this book called Flavours of Thought. And Flavours of Thought, the 22 keys of the major arcana are modes of thinking. And then after that, I wrote this book on the minor arcana, and the four suits of the minor arcana relate to the moon phase, and they relate to the dimensions. So the suit of wands is the ninth dimension. That's the plane of ideas, and we're more attuned to the plane of ideas between new moon and first quarter. And then the suit of cups relates to the creative plane, and that's more active between first quarter and full moon. And then we go into the formative plane, which is the fifth dimension, the dimension of time, and that's active from full moon to third quarter. And then we go into the suite of pentacles, which is the grounded plane, if you like, from third quarter to new moon. So if you've got a project and you muse on the ideas of the project from full moon to first quarter, and then you sort of dream of all the places that can go from first quarter to full moon, and then you evaluate the various things you're working on between full moon and third quarter, and then you act from third quarter to new moon. And I've got a little model of that, and it's inspiration, dream, evaluate, act, which spells idea. Right. So if you use the moon flow to drive your creative output, everything seems to go much easier. Now, I've been doing this for about 4 or 5 years now, and it seems that you also seem to get all the things done at the right time, but also externally to you, all the things you need to help you create the stuff you're creating seem to arrive at the right time. Not just the ideas, but also the external things that can help you create this. I didn't know I needed an insight timer to get access to a worldwide audience. Obviously, right. That was known. I didn't know that I thought I was an author with meditations on the side, and now I realize I'm a meditation guide with books on the side, if you know what I mean. But actually there's something else beyond the meditation guide which is driving, which is the metaphysician and the mystic and what have you, and the channel. I do channel, but I've got no idea what I'm channeling. I just know it's coming through me, not from me.
Yes. And then in amongst all this, there's also the music composition. So does that, is there a sort of rhythm to how you create? So for example, writing, then the meditation, and then the music, or is there an order? Is it quite organic? Can it vary depending on what you're doing?
In the path to overstanding, there's 4 modules. There's a free module you get, which is the Flavours of Thought module. You can sign up for that and get into the work that way. And then on the new moon, I create a bit of the audio book, which will eventually be the printed book. I published the audio book. On the first quarter, I publish meditation on the key, each key. I'm up to Justice 11 key at the moment, I'm just writing that at the moment. And then I do a piece of music inspired by that key. And each of the tarot keys starts in a different key on the keyboard as well. So, for example, Justice is F sharp, just so it happens. And so it gives me a key to aim for. But also, as you listen to the whole album, the keys shift and go in a big circle, which is tarot is very rotational in its basis. Then so that comes out on the full moon, and then on the third quarter, I produce an Overstanding conversation, which is level. So overstanding sits above understanding, and Overstanding sits above overstanding. And I have a conversation with somebody about something weird, wacky, and otherworldly, but in a grounded way. So yeah, so the moon phase drives my creative output at the moment, but I'm always using I use the tarot keys also to inform me and inspire me as well.
When did tarot come in to all this? Was this prior to getting into meditation? Was this before your first publication, or did that come after? Where did the tarot start speaking to you and weaving into your work?
It was I did it when I started to meditate myself, because I was quite I sold this second business. Weird things started to happen. So I went in this course by a lady called Lisa Turner called How to Be Psychic. And she kind of relabeled the course halfway through it, How to Be a Spiritual Practitioner. And on the first day of this course, it was 9 weekends over a year, and all these people you'd see at a psychic fair. All these kind of people would turn up, and then there was just me, who'd no experience for any of this stuff. And I remember Lisa said to me, she said, "You'll be the easiest one to do because you come in with no preconceptions, right?" And halfway through the course, she put us in a semicircle, only 9 of us, and she had the major arcana in front of her, face down, in a spread. Now, bear in mind, up to this point, I knew of the tarot, but only like James Bond, Jane Seymour giving Roger Moore the death card kind of thing. So I knew of it, but I had no knowledge of it at all. So and so she had all the cards. She said, pick a card out, keep it face down. Then she went around the circle, and then just if you got to, you turn it over, and you say the first thing that comes into your head. And I had the Tower. And the first thing that came to my head is that it's all about death and destruction and the old falling away so you can rebuild the new. Right? So obviously Tower of Babel's written in there and this sort of stuff. At the end of it, she said to me, I'll show you the book actually. She said, "You need to read this book. It's called The Key to the Wisdom of Ages by Paul Costa-Case." So I started reading that book, and as I read the book, I'd vibrate. I could feel there was stuff coming out of the book. I sensed also that there was content coming out of the white space on the book as well. I learned how to do that. I learned how to put intent into the white space. I know that's something that Siri does with her art, and it's something you can do with music as well, because in the gap between the notes in music, you can put content. It's unseen and unheard, but it's there. It's in the state that you're in when you're creating the music. So I started reading this book. And then I found out that he had a school. He passed away in 1955, although he did come to me in a dream once. He came to me in a dream, and he gave me a 1 peso note, a Mexican 1 peso note. And I went onto Wikipedia, and 1 peso is like a cent. So you wouldn't think that a cent would have a note related to it. But in between his death date and my birth date, the 1 peso note was a valid form of currency in Mexico.
Right.
That's a bit weird, isn't it?
What's the date?
Yeah, so in between 1955 when he passed away and 1958 when I was born, the 1 peso was in circulation at that time. So anyway, that's weird. So I started studying with his school. It's in California, and went deeper and deeper into the tarot. And I discovered that the tarot was so complex, really, really complex. And I like making things really simple. So my first book on the tarot, Flavours of Thought, was a modern day contemporary interpretation of what the major arcana really meant. And then I thought I better do the same thing with the minor arcana. That's called Planes of Being. Again, not much tarot reference in there, but lots of tarot interpretation of what it really means. And then the Pact of Overstanding is the third in that series. And I'm exploring two other glyphs in there, the Tree of Life and the Cube of Space. And they are tools for unlocking the soul and the soul finding you, and also soul incarnation as well, which is a big thing of mine. So the idea is that we don't have to have us and our soul separate. Our soul and ours can emerge together, and we can give the soul a natural incarnate experience.
Yes. Wow. Fascinating. So you did quite a lot of tarot-inspired works, and then later you moved into the sort of, would you describe it as fantasy fiction, or what do you how do you describe your work? I mean, it's so, I love the multi-layered approach, because you have it as a written book, you have it as an audiobook, there's all the soundtrack that goes, it's almost, it's quite cinematic the way you create.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was in South Africa before I wrote 100 Years of Ermintrude. So you just broke up there, Fiona. Are you back again?
I'm back. I can hear. Yeah. Sorry.
So before I wrote 100 Years of Ermintrude, or 100 Years of Ermintrude wrote itself, I put this outline together for this book called Soul. And I was in South Africa, and I was reading a book by Art of Timefulness called The Phenomenon of Man. And again, a bit like Paul Foster Case's book, The Keys to the Wisdom of Ages, I found it really interesting, but his language made it non-accessible to normal human beings. So I thought, well, why don't we take some of this stuff? Because I had a big pile of metaphysical books by this time. Why don't I take some of this stuff and put it into a novel? So I wrote this first draft of a novel called Soulwaves. Never published it because I wasn't that good a writer at the time. And then all the other books came in the way. And then on my 59th book, I was at my best friend from school's funeral. And I thought, I'd better get this book. And then COVID hit and stuff like that. So it came out just as COVID hit. It's written a lot of the scenes. The early part of the book is in Wuhan and Beijing, which is quite prophetic in its own right. And it's in Soulwaves. I've got stuff in there that's too bonkers to put in my non-fiction books. So that was the beauty of Soulwaves. I could use it to put some of the weirder things that have happened to me into that book, and then weave it into a storyline, which is a future history of the Earth and where we're going over the next 100 years or so. Then the second book, Insertions, goes backwards and forwards in time. I wrote that completely in lockdown and published it in lockdown. And like Soulwaves, I put a soundtrack to it as well, and a set of meditations and what have you, because that's 12 short stories, and so it leads itself to exploring the 12 the numbers 1 to 12, and funnily enough, the notes on the keyboard, there's 12 notes in every octave, so lots of numerology in that, and what have you, all delivered over 12 moon rotations.
Love it.
Yes.
Amazing.
So that's where that came from. So it was me having fun and realizing that that we're on this earth for a short period of time, and don't leave a book on your hard drive. Get it out there.
Very good reminder. Well, we have the co-creator of your deck here on the call, and yeah, I'm curious to know, especially since I've got you both here at the same time, how was it that you two connected, and this new project, the seed of a new project emerged?
It came from the moon, didn't it? It came from the moon, Siri. You want to just unmute yourself and share, Siri?
Hello, everyone. It came from the moon, and the phase was right. And I was subscribing to Tom's brilliant newsletters. I can't remember which one, but either way, I took my guts and my courage and approached him and asked him, why haven't you got any illustrations in your newsletters? They are all text. And then he said, yes, I would rather like to have some illustrations. So then there you go. That was 5 years ago, was it, Tom?
Yeah, 2017, we started to do these daily illustrations, just for today illustrations.
Yeah.
We bounced them around. So initially I would write them, They're like aphorisms, and then so we would illustrate them. And then I said, well, why don't you just send me some of your art, and I'll let your art inspire my words and that sort of stuff. So we bounce those around every time. We produce one a day without missing for over 5 years now, which is great.
Yeah.
But we haven't met physically yet, which we're trying to address this year. This coming year. And then we had the idea of creating a deck together, and so I love extending stuff. So the major arcana in our deck would be a 23 key major arcana, and we said, why don't we have a fifth suit for the minor arcana, the suit of Overstanding, and so we started creating that, and then we kind of realised there's more coming in, and we're not ready to complete the deck yet because the deck is being revealed to us. And so the writing and the creation of the book is kind of informing us how big it might be. And so when you think, if the 22 major arcana reflect 22 modes of consciousness, what would happen if we introduce a 23rd mode of consciousness? Then why stop at 23? And if you're having a fifth suit for the minor arcana, which allows you to overstand the other 4 suits, what would happen if a 6th suit came in? This sort of stuff. So there will come a time when we say, oh, we've got to stop, we're now going to produce it, and this will be maybe version 1 of the deck. But I think that's going to be the latter part of next year. The other thing about the deck as well, the thing about the tarot, is that we're seeing it as a flat 2-dimensional structure, and it only really makes sense when you bring it to a cube. So this is a cube of the tarot, and even then it doesn't make sense, because you have to go to a hypercube, what's called a tesseract, and then you start to understand. So next year I'm unfolding the cube of karma in the tree of life. We just finished the tree of life. I'm going to do the cube of karma throughout next year, and explain how when we see ourselves as 3D beings, but we're really multidimensional beings having this 3D experience, everything makes a bit more sense. So you have to come out of this 2D world, and it's possible that really that a 2D deck is not what we should create. We might have to create a multi-dimensional structure. So it might be more a sort of a cube and hypercube and this sort of stuff, and come out in quite a weird thing, which is why I'm investigating 3D printers at the moment to see whether we need to create in 3D.
Yes. I love how open you are to manifesting these things that come into your imagination. And
this goes back to being a techie. So I started life as a techie.
Yes.
And so I've still got that foundation, so that knowing video and audio very well, and all things technical, and then learning about the internet before I then started to produce anything which was creative. But it makes everything easy from my perspective, and looking back on that was my foundation, to be like the root chakra was always grounded, and that's really important when you're having these metaphysical experiences. It keeps you really grounded, and I know that for a fact because once I've actually done a full body levitation. So I know what it's like. I've experienced levitation, and one of the things I explore in the Soulwaves book is there's no point learning to levitate unless you learn how to unlevitate. Otherwise, you'd end up at 39,000 feet and not be able to breathe. So, so we have to keep ourselves grounded. And just before we started, it was lovely to have that grounding few breaths with you as well to keep them.
Yes. Well, I'm glad you appreciated that. Thank you. And I always find it a nice way to begin any of these journeys is, from an appreciation of our earth. And, I practice as a herbalist myself, so I find it important to have that earth connection as well. But like yourself, also have an openness to just the freedom that we have with our imaginations and where that can lead us. And you've got all these technical abilities to manifest them in amazing ways, which is wonderful. So I'm aware that I'd asked you before we went on the call if there's anything of your experience that you would like to share with those of us who are tuning into the Divine Business Journey series. And you'd mentioned that you tune into the chakra systems to support your business. I'd really love to invite you to share a little bit. I'll maybe just pass over to you to share a little bit on that, and perhaps just guide us in the meditation that you had in mind.
Yeah, I'll explain how this came about. Now, you've got to understand is that apart from my metaphysical research into the tarot, I do very little research, and I've been on very few courses, and no one's taught me about the chakras, right? I've not really read about them that much either. And I don't tend to listen to other people's meditations on chakras either, because I don't want to be influenced by other people. I don't want to plagiarize them. So I got approached by a magazine called Soul and Spirit. I don't know if it's still in publication right now, maybe 5-6 years ago. And this lady, Hannah May, she asked me to, would I put a series of 7 meditations together to help people go on a journey? And they publish one a day on their blog and stuff. I said, sure, but if we're going to do it, why don't we do something around the structure? So why don't we take the chakra system, which has got 7 meditations, and I will channel in 7 meditations on the chakras, which I did. So, and I'll take you through them just now. So I created this course called Heartful Living for them. And then I knew also about other chakras like the Omega chakra, which sits beneath our root, and the Alpha chakra sits above our root. So I actually ended up doing 9 meditations in the series, and then ended up putting another one together on it called the Unified Chakra, where you go into a place where the Unified Chakra is just one chakra effectively. But people talk about chakra blockages and imbalances, and I couldn't really find too much about this. So I had to tune into what is a blockage and what is an imbalance. That's important before we do this penetration. So an imbalance is like, let's say you've got you're sending lots of love out from your heart, but you haven't got the reciprocal amount of love coming in. That creates an imbalance. And a block, so that's if you like, because our chakras sort of point outwards from our body, apart from our crown and our root, which points vertically. Although you can redirect chakras in loads of directions, that happen, but that's what tends to happen. And then a blockage is when one chakra, let's say your throat chakra, is not communicating vertically with your heart chakra. And you can get to a point when if you're not speaking your truth, or you're not loving what you say effectively, you can get blocked vertically. So blockages and imbalances are slightly different. And so I in the course, which is now available, it's called Heartful Living. That's available through my Soundwise app, where I keep the path to Overstanding published and that sort of stuff. It takes you through a whole journey through the chakras. So what I've done, I'll just play a bit of background music, and we'll kind of tune in. I don't know if that's coming through at all, but that's a bit of ambient layer. So as you mentioned before we started this call, the best way to tune in is to use the breath. And specifically when it comes into the chakras, the way to think of the breath is being a whole body breath. And the in-breath starting at your root. And on the in-breath, it goes all the way up your spine to the top of your head. And then on the out-breath, it comes all the way back down your spine, all the way down to the root again. So we just breathe together. Why do we breathe in and out together 7 times? It makes sense. We're talking about 7 chakras. And as you're going, the breath is coming up. It's energizing each chakra point. And as it's coming down, it's then re-energizing, bringing down the energy from the above to the below. As it's doing this, it's just clearing any slight blockages that might be there in your body. There's 2 or 3 more breaths and we're ready to begin. And a little time ago, I used to live in Surrey, and my house was based on 7 chakras. I had the massive silver birch down one end of the garden, and in the front of the house we had a water feature, and the silver birch was like the root chakra, and the water feature was like the crown chakra. And I used to take people on chakra walks, which is fascinating. And the walk would go something like this. I'd start with the tree, and I'd say to the person I was with, how strong are your foundations? What needs to be shown up? What building blocks could you do with putting in place? What haven't you paid attention to for some time? And this might be some gap in knowledge, going back and learning something new. You might be giving yourself a bit of me time as well. And the way to strengthen our root chakra is with a very specific breath. We just allow the breath to sit at the root. And on the in-breath, you imagine that the energy is coming up through the earth. And on the out-breath, it goes back down into the earth. You're probably not aware of this, but when we sit on something, a few atoms of our body, a few atoms of our clothing will detach themselves and they'll actually merge with the atoms of the thing we're sitting on microscopically. So just think of yourself now as being really, really grounded into your seat, and that the atoms have merged together, creating a very, very strong bond with the earth. And at the same time, we build our foundations. We're also strengthening the foundations of Mother Earth as well. And we're conveying on her our self-awareness and consciousness with a self-aware aspect of planet Earth, along with quite a lot of other beings like whales and dolphins, chimpanzees, parrots, blackbirds, and some fish. Octopi, let's never forget about the octopi and cephalopods. So we're one of the beings on the earth that created this consciousness, and that consciousness comes right down from us. But let's just move up now to the sacral point. The sacral point is about 1 inch or 2, a few centimeters below your navel. And this is the point where our needs are met or not. So if your needs aren't being met, it creates an imbalance in the sacral chakra and a blockage. But when your needs are being fulfilled, it strengthens the sacral chakra. As I mentioned, every chakra from the sacral up to the third eye actually points outwards. So there's something you could do with right now, something you need right now. All you need to do is imagine there's a vortex coming out from your sacral chakra in front of you. And that sends a message out to the universe that you're in need of something. And all you need to do to allow that need to be fulfilled is to keep a quiet mind and pay attention to how that need might be fulfilled. And when it comes along, when that fulfillment comes along, to remember to say, thank you. And this is like quite cyclical. So the more that your needs get met, the more you can want and have. It's as simple as that. So let's move up to our solar plexus chakra, which is a couple of inches above our navel, 3 or 4 centimeters above our navel. And this is the seat of our inner tuition. This is the gut mind that sometimes we override. If you ever said something like, oh, I wish I'd trusted my gut on that, that will be your head, your loud head, overriding the gut. And the gut is an old mind from an evolutionary perspective. It only speaks in a yes or a no, a go or a no-go. And strangely, it works about 5 seconds ahead of time. So if you've got a decision that you need to get some advice on right now, a go or a no-go, all you need to do is ask your head. Get your head to ask a question. Get your mind to go quiet. We'll go through this in a minute. Get your mind to go quiet and ask your gut. Is it a yes or a no, a go or a no-go? And bizarrely, you get the answer back slightly before you finish asking the question. And when you get the yes or a no back, what you can do is then say, thank you if you get a yes. But if you get a no or a no-go, ask what would have to change so it could flip into a green light rather than a red light. And now we move up to the heart chakra, just at the seat of your breastbone. Now the heart is a very powerful center. It's much more powerful in terms of than your head. And it can send out love, healing, anywhere on the planet and backwards in space and time. The weirdest thing I've done with my heart chakra is heal a budgie in Vancouver over Skype. It's quite an amazing ray. And I just want you to imagine that your heart has got a vortex that comes out of it. And on that vortex, you can place love for the planet, love for another human being, love for the cosmos. And the more you send out that love, the more around the back of your heart, that love comes back in again. And when we got an imbalance, what happens is this gets disproportionate. It can weaken our heart chakra. So it's really important that when we send out love, we're also open to receiving love back in. One of the things we can do to energize the center is imagine that this vortex is coming out of our heart, splitting in two, coming right round to the back of us, and then back into the back of our heart. So it actually creates a bit of a heart shape horizontally around us. So as you breathe out unconditional love, but it's best to start with self-love. Now as you breathe in, imagine that love is coming right back in to you again. And in the same way that if a plane depressurizes, they say put your oxygen mask on first, and then you can help others that might need their mask to put on. It's really important that we maintain our self-love so we are in a better place to help other people. And that's not a narcissistic love, that's pure, unconditional self-love. So let's move up to the throat now. And the throat is the place where we express our thought forms. And if we're not allowed to speak, or we're not allowed to speak with love, we can get a sore throat. So often when we get a dis-ease, it's showing us that we've got some sort of imbalance in our chakra system, in our metaphysical makeup, if you like. So one of the things we can do with our throat, which is interesting, is that most of the time we only ever speak on an out breath. So just try and speak on an in breath right now to get you an idea of things. Well, I'm going to give you a mantra where we're actually going to try and do that right now. So I've done this a couple of times live, and once someone said I'm a flautist and I can speak on an in breath. So someone can play the flute, obviously got very good breath control. And someone else said I'm Icelandic and we also speak on an in breath as well. Siri might have something to mention about that. I don't know if it's the Scandinavian thing at all. But anyway, we're going to try and speak on an in breath right now. We're going to use a mantra called Mona Oha. That's M-O-N-A and Oha, O-H-A, and it means I trust in the Elohim light language. So I want you to say Mona on the out breath and on the in breath. It's quite hard to do, but just do that without trying to put your throat and any stress. So it's Mona on the out breath and on the in breath. And then just repeat that 3 times. And now repeat it another 3 times, but silently. So you think that you're actually saying it, but you're not actually saying it at all. And as you do this, notice how your throat activates, even though all you're doing is having thoughts. Quite interesting. And that's as good as any gargling or mouthwash that you can do. So, Mona Aha means I trust. So now let's move up to the third eye, which is kind of in between your eyebrows and at the top of your brainstem. I want you just to imagine now that you're looking at the back of your eyeballs. And as you're doing that, I will look at you from the back of my eyeballs too. So we're seeing third eye to third eye. This works, by the way, whether you're watching this live or watching the recording. So we're going to look at each other third eye to third eye. And now what I want you to do is just to, for your attention, instead of going just above the bridge of my glasses where my third eye is sighted, let your attention go to the left and the right of my head and the top and bottom, excuse me, my rain-soaked hair this morning from a very wet dog walk. So just allow your attention to be in the center of my forehead, your gaze to be at the center, but your attention to go wider. And now widen it out still further, so it's the edge of the screen, top and bottom, left and right. And then just notice when thoughts come in, your attention drops and wanes from the screen. And when your attention is brought back to the edges of the screen, how your thoughts go quiet again. And this is known as the quantum collapse of thought. It's the place where your thoughts go to zero and other things can come in. This is where 100 Years of Ermintrude comes in, the idea for your next book, the next thing you're doing comes in from the no thought place. And interestingly enough, I just chose a bit of music at random. The bit of music you might just be able to hear in the background is called the no thing. It's just 20 minutes of ambient music that gets you into the no thing space. You can find that on Insight Timer somewhere. And now let's move up to the crown. And they say if you've got a closed mind, you may as well give up. So the crown is the place where all this stuff comes in. It's where the limitless light comes into our body. And I want you to imagine now that the top of your skull has gone translucent. And now breathe in. So the light comes all the way down through your crown, past your third eye, through your throat, past your heart, past your solar plexus, past your sacral, and into your root. And again, come back up the other way. That's in, so in this way. No, it's in, up, and then it's out, down. That's it. What we'll do just to wrap this up, and we're coming up to the 10-minute mark, is just allow the breath to come right out of your head, above your head on the in-breath, and all the way back down and then out through the root on the out-breath, about 3 or 4 inches below the root, and then back up again. So that's the general chakra journey and cleanse. It's very brief. The Heartful Living course extends over a good hour or so, and each of the meditations comes with a specific energy that works with it as well to help your chakras be energized. So I hope that was useful, and I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you, Fiona, for giving me the opportunity.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed tuning into each part of those different chakras and seeing through those filters. I'm really curious to hear, Tom, how do you work with, did you work with all of them simultaneously when you tune into them, or like in that order that you presented them just now, or do you sort of intuitively tune into one or another while, when you're, addressing different aspects of your work in different ways? How do you, what kind of practical uses for these different, I suppose, ways of seeing do you, would you like to share with us?
There's a good book by Rudolf Steiner called How to Know the Higher Worlds, and in it he describes how and he mentions all in another book called Cosmic Memory. There's two halves of this story in the two books. How that about 2 million years ago, when we got self-awareness, we learned how to control our 5th chakra from our 6th chakra. So when you're speaking, I'm speaking, we're having some thoughts, and then we're vibrating the air with our throat. And then those thoughts are getting picked up by people's ears, and then they're having similar or different thoughts based on whatever you're saying. And so being mindful about what you say and how you say it and the intent behind how you say it is really, really important. And we've got that mapped, but most people are unconscious about that. And in it, he says the next phase of human evolution, that happened kind of spontaneously, and spirit was involved with that. The next phase of evolution is for us to take conscious control of the other chakra points. And I know how to do the heart chakra, and I've got several meditations on how to control the heart chakra. And in this course, Heartful Living, there's 3 applications for it. One is general self-love thing, what we did in that brief meditation. One is you can attract your soulmate. And that could be somebody that your perfect life partner, or a business partner, or someone that can help you on your path. And you can also soften tense situations. So, if you're going into a meeting that's going to be slightly grievous, you can send love into the hearts of everyone in that meeting before you get there, and you'll find the room will be softened. So I've got that tape. I know how to do that, and I know how to teach that. But I also know that we're going to take conscious control of our lower chakra points as well, and they're going to lead to things like levitation and bilocation even as well. So but sometimes when you're on this sort of journey, you only get shown what's safe for you, and also in my case what's safe for me to teach other people. So I've been in rooms of 50, 60, 70 people. I've initiated lots of people's heart chakras. But you can also take control of your pineal chakra as well, and you can send that in loads of different directions to know things about things you might not know, which is kind of interesting, and that's called a pineal ray activation. So I've got the pineal ray activated and the heart ray activated. Haven't done anything else with the lower chakra points. But to answer your specific question, people say to me, how often do you meditate? And I say, I don't. I'm just in the meditative state all the time. So I don't have to do, after a while, this happened maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 years after meditating, you're just in that state all the time. And so you don't have to go into formal meditation, although when I'm creating music or writing and stuff, I'm in maybe a slightly deeper meditative state, with phone off and all that kind of stuff. So when you get into this activated chakra state, you end up in what's called a unified chakra. It's called all your chakras become one. So you don't have to differentiate between your gut and your heart and your solar plexus and your root, because you're just one all of the time. So when you're sending out love from your heart, you're doing it in a grounded way. You're doing it so your needs are being fulfilled, because the last thing you want to do is to send love out and then deplete your heart, as I said, because then you're no use to anybody. So you're doing it so your needs are being met and the needs of others are being met, and you're doing it so your gut is the right time to do it. It's the right way to do it. So sometimes when I do a conscious heart ray intervention with somebody, I will control how much of that heart rate goes over to them. Sometimes they can't accept too much of it, and that's the gut kind of informing the heart what to do, because you can't do that consciously. There's no conscious circuit that says, oh, this person needs 70% of the love. You just do that from a gut feel perspective. And also when you're sending the heart rate out, the words that you use and the manner of your words is important as well. So all of these tools can be used for nefarious purposes as well as good purposes. You can go into speed dating environment with an activated heart ray, and you can get people to fall in love with you, and they wouldn't know what's going on. In fact, when you do fall in love with someone spontaneously, what's happening is your heart rays are intertwining anyway. So that's kind of like a kind of metaphysical mechanism for how it all works. So to me, it's about using being kind of mindful about what you're using. But when you get to a place when you can just do it, like riding a bike, it becomes like an unconscious competence.
While you're speaking, I'm aware that you're working on the justice, the theme of justice at the moment. It was interesting, before I came on to the call, I'd gone for lunch with my mum and we came home, and I saw a big banner of scales. And I was looking at it and going, there wasn't any wording or anything. It was I was really curious that there's this big banner. I wonder what that means. Is there a market behind it in the back there or something? And I had no idea, but I just sort of left it. And as I'm tuning into the things that you're saying, I'm kind of getting all of the symbolism of the and of course you're working on it, and some of the things that you're mentioning as examples, for example, soulmates and business partners. And of course, with the scales, you're kind of having to weigh up what's fair and equal balance within relationships, and it's connected with Libra and Venus, and creating harmonious relationships and so on. And so I'm just, as you're taught, I'm kind of tuning into that's clearly what you're immersed in at the moment. And I'd love to, and we're kind of coming quite close to the end of our call, and I would, you mentioned to me beforehand that, and I had said to yourself before we started recording that I had watched some of your ambient music, which Siri had been doing some illustrations to, and you mentioned that perhaps Siri was that's something that Siri is doing at the moment. Do you want to speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, well,
Siri, maybe I'd like to come on also and mention, since you obviously the two of you work very well in partnership and with your work, and that's a really beautiful example, I suppose, of serendipity bringing you together and then finding this harmonious way of co-creating together. And just as we finish up, I wonder if either or both of you have a brief comment to say about that side of things as we're coming to an end.
Well, Volume is unmute yourself, Siri, but also Siri's launching a new service where she's actually illustrating live a talk like this and capturing all the things that are spoken about in the talk in a live drawing. I don't know if you've done one for this call, Siri, have you?
Actually, I have got two drawings. They are not drawings per se, but they are drawings from this energy of your call. So it was very interesting to see what came through, especially in your meditation, Tom, as it always is. I have been doing this for years, and let me just dry off one of the watercolor bubbles in the bottom here. I'm sure, Tom, that you will understand what this is or understand what this is. So, funnily enough, this came through just as you were interviewing Tom, Fiona, and I have no words to describe it other than look at this and analyze this, Tom, for yourself.
Again, it's not a head analysis. It comes into different areas.
Yeah.
Well, and the way you work is quite magical because we're not met yet, but we definitely. It's definitely one of these relationships where 1 and 1 equals 3, which I just love.
Indeed. And the second one from the meditation is this one. It was a funny format, but it's a chakra explanation from your end. So.
And I'd say what Siri is actually doing there is drawing my aura. So she's seeing the colours of the aura, even though she can only see the top half of my head. Physically on the call, then that's pretty much showing the aura patterns that come, and that will shift as I'm talking. Then those colours will shift as well, which is kind of interesting. So it's so one of these. It's like you see in the scales. There's so many signs around us, but most of the time, because we keep a busy mind, we miss the signs. So as you say, I'm just producing a meditation inspired by Key 11 Justice and an ambient track. And the way I do that, just so you know what the mechanism is, I'd read the actual the chapter from Paul Foster Case's book. I always see new things in there, and there's a great word in here called equilibration. And that's not being in balance. It's the act of getting yourself in balance. And the metaphor I'm going to use in the guided meditation is, instead of being on one end of the seesaw, you stand in the middle and you control the seesaw. And sometimes you might want it to rock quite a lot because you might like the fun, but a lot of the times you want to keep it steady. But you can also see something coming that will rock it and then adjust yourself in advance of it being rocked. And then in the music track, which I'm halfway through composing as well, what I'm doing is having an ambient layer which sits in the middle, and then a guitar voice on the left, a flute on the right, and they repeat the same music. And as the track goes on, electronically they move together. So you can see now that you've got that techie, whiz-kiddie, nerdy guy, this geek from his 20s, still active in his 60s, but with some new skills and what have you. So that's kind of, in summary, my journey of strong foundations in terms of technical knowledge, but being brought together with a lot of fun and experimentation, but also with a metaphysical aim that when you listen to this music without any guidance whatsoever, it will bring your disparate parts together as well. And we can do that in things like, we can do that with music without any words, which is great. And that's the skill I've only just acquired recently. And to me, these new skills keep us going, because the more that we strengthen our foundations by giving ourselves new skills, the more we can achieve and the more we can do.
Well, it's been absolutely fascinating to get this glimpse into your mind and how the different threads of all of your creations weave together, and to have Siri also, your co-creative tarot business partner in the mix here today. I appreciate having her energy here too, and the beautiful artwork that you shared with us. Thank you so much, Siri. I might take a screenshot, if I may, and share them in some pictures so people can see them.
Yeah. I'll send them to you via email.
Oh, that would be lovely. Yeah, thank you, Siri. So as we close, Tom, would you like to share a little bit about the best ways people can find you? And I've got some links to share about the Heartful Living course, so I'll link that in the replay of this video afterwards. But where's the best way for people to connect with you? If you'd like to share that just now, so that anyone who'd like to find out more about your work can do so.
Thank you. Yeah, there's two places really. Insight Timer is where I put all my free meditations up there, and they got some premium content as well. For $60 a year, you can get the premium courses on Insight Timer, and that's insighttimer.com/Tom Evans. And Siri's on there as well. You put Siri Opley, SIRIOPLI, you'll find Siri on Insight Timer too. And then my main website is tomevans.co. Someone got to the .com before me, and on the main site, on the main page of that, you'll find a link to this Path to Overstanding, and that's a subscription product of mine. And there's loads of levels of doing it. You can do it. You can pay annually and get some discount, or you can go monthly, and you can either buy the whole archive, which has got my Soulwaves book and all my weird and wonderful stuff in it, or you can just get the Path to Overstanding itself, which is these modules that are produced by the moon. And what I've done with it, I feel really strongly that spiritual advancement has been a gift that's been given to me, should not be expensive. So it's like the price of a copy a month, that sort of stuff. So there's no strange upsell. You don't get halfway through it and all of a sudden it gets really expensive. That's what it is, kind of forever, you know what I mean? And I'll keep producing stuff for that as long as I can. I've got at least next year planned, and I've already got some ideas for what I'm going to do in 2024 and beyond as well. So I can't stop the flow coming in, and as long as it's flowing, it'll keep flowing out through this subscription product and what have you. And also, what's great about the Soundwise app, and indeed Insight Timer, is it's completely interactive, so people can listen to something and then make a comment, and I respond to everything on there. And also, you can get to meet other people going on the journey as well, because amazing like-minded souls in there.
Amazing. Oh, well, it's beautiful to be able to connect with you, Tom, and also you, Siri, in this way, and to get to share the two of you with my community. So yes, we'll see where this goes. And like you share in a lot of your work, you know, time is, well, it's a flexible construct, isn't it? So I'm not sure who will tune into this and when, but I'm sure that they will get whatever gems of wisdom that they need at whatever time they discover it. So thank you, Tom, so much for sharing your divine business journey, and thank you to everyone who is joining us whenever it is that you are tuning into this on the replay. And I look forward to connecting with you all beyond. Lots and lots of love. Thank you for joining us, and see you in the Divine Business Circle.
Thank you so much.